When an ancient martial art developed by a Buddhist nun centuries ago clashes with the cutting-edge fighting system of mixed martial arts, what happens? This isn't just a battle of techniques, it's a collision between history and evolution, between traditional wisdom and cosmology. Today we dive deep into the explosive encounters between Wing Chun practitioners and MMA fighters. Welcome back to Fight Legends Unleashed, where we break down the most intense martial arts matchups in history. Today we're analyzing 4 remarkable fights between Wing Chun practitioners and MMA fighters, battles that have ignited heated debates in the martial arts community. Evolution. Encounters. Let's understand what makes this matchup so fascinating. Wing Chun, developed in southern China, emphasizes efficiency through centerline control, close-range combat, and rapid-fire striking. MMA, on the other hand, represents the modern evolution of combat sports, taking what works from various martial arts and discarding what doesn't. In this video, we'll analyze 4 fights that put these contrasting approaches to the ultimate test. From crushing defeats to surprising victories, these matches reveal what happens when traditional wisdom meets modern fighting methodology. Let's begin with our first explosive encounter. Our first clash pits traditional Wing Chun against MMA in a highly anticipated matchup. Xiaodong, already known in China for his confrontations with traditional martial artists, faced off against Wing Chun practitioner Ding Hao. This fight would become a stark demonstration of the gap between traditional training and modern combat sports methodology. From the opening bell, the contrasting approaches were immediately apparent. Ding Hao assumed the classic Wing Chun stance, palms forward in the characteristic guard position. Xiaodong, however, displayed the mobile, adaptable stance typical of MMA fighters. What happened next would expose the critical weaknesses of relying solely on traditional techniques against a well-rounded fighter. As Ding Hao attempted to establish his Wing Chun game, Xiaodong immediately showed why pure traditional stylists often struggle against MMA fighters. Bobbing and weaving to avoid the straight-line attacks, Xu demonstrated how modern boxing head movement can neutralize Wing Chun's signature chain punches. A clean right hand to the jaw quickly highlighted the difference in striking efficiency. The most telling moment came when Xu executed a perfectly timed takedown, something Wing Chun's traditional curriculum simply doesn't prepare practitioners for. While Ding managed to show resilience by getting back up, this sequence exposed a critical gap in traditional Wing Chun training: the lack of comprehensive ground defense. What's particularly interesting is that despite Wing Chun's reputation for devastating low kicks, Ding barely attempted to use this weapon in his arsenal. This raised questions about whether the pressure of real combat made him abandon his training, or if the traditional training methods hadn't prepared him for implementing these techniques against a resisting opponent. As the fight progressed, Xu's dominance became increasingly apparent. Each time Ding attempted to close distance with Wing Chun's trademark chain punches, Xu would either slip the strikes and counter or change levels for a takedown. This perfectly illustrated how modern MMA's layered defense systems can neutralize traditional single-dimensional attacks. Our second fight offers a more competitive showing, demonstrating what happens when a Wing Chun practitioner adapts their traditional art for modern combat. Qilala in white shorts, representing a more evolved version of Wing Chun, faced off against Korean MMA fighter Lee Suk-min in black shorts in a bout that would challenge preconceptions about traditional martial arts. From the opening exchanges, it was clear this wasn't going to be a typical traditional versus modern matchup. Qilala showed an adapted style, blending Wing Chun's traditional centerline theory with modern boxing mechanics. This hybrid approach initially caught Lee off guard, leading to some successful exchanges in the first round. A crucial moment came when Xi managed to drop Lee with a perfectly timed strike, demonstrating that Wing Chun principles can be effective when properly adapted to modern fighting. However, Lee's MMA training showed its value in recovery and adaptation. He quickly adjusted his strategy, beginning to cut off Qi's angles and force him to fight, moving backward. The fight's most technical sequence came in the second round when both fighters engaged in the clinch. Here we saw the limitation of pure Wing Chun clinch work against MMA's more comprehensive standing grappling system. While Chi showed some effective frames from his Wing Chun training, Li's superior clinch control repeatedly put him in advantageous positions. What made this fight particularly interesting was Chi's attempt to integrate some Sanda techniques with his Wing Chun base. This adaptation showed both the potential and limitations of modernizing traditional arts. While it allowed him to be more competitive, his hybrid style still struggled against Li's more cohesive MMA game. Our third fight demonstrates something remarkable: how traditional techniques, when properly adapted and timed, can create devastating results. Zhou Van Duin, representing Wing Chun, delivered one of the fastest knockouts ever recorded by a Wing Chun practitioner in a professional MMA competition, clocking in at just 14 seconds. What makes this fight particularly fascinating is how it challenges our expectations. After a respectful glove touch, both fighters took their positions, but what happened next was anything but typical. Van Duin, rather than using traditional Wing Chun chain punches or trapping techniques, demonstrated perfect timing and distance management, core principles of Wing Chun applied through a modern lens. The knockout sequence itself was a masterclass in efficiency, a principle central to Wing Chun's philosophy. Van Duin's right hand found its mark with surgical precision, sending his opponent crashing to the canvas. This wasn't just luck. It was Wing Chun's principle of centerline control adapted to MMA rules and timing. This fight raises an interesting question. Was this a victory for traditional Wing Chun, or was it a demonstration of how traditional arts must evolve to remain effective in modern combat sports? The answer likely lies somewhere in between, showing that core principles of traditional arts can remain valid when properly adapted to contemporary fighting contexts. Our final fight brings us full circle, showcasing another clash between traditional Wing Chun and modern MMA. Yu Changhua, notably a practitioner from the Ip Man lineage, faced off against MMA fighter Xiong Chengcheng in a bout that would further expose the gaps between traditional training and modern combat sports. From the opening moments, the difference in fighting methodology was stark. Despite Yu's prestigious lineage, his traditional Wing Chun approach, characterized by an upright stance and traditional hand positions, proved problematic against Xiong's mobile, diversified attack strategy. What's particularly noteworthy is that Xiong initially fought with one hand, demonstrating supreme confidence in his ability to handle traditional techniques. The fight highlighted several critical issues with pure traditional training. Yu's attempts at traditional Wing Chun trapping and Pak Sao techniques, while fundamental to the art, proved ineffective against an opponent who understood modern striking angles and distance management. Each time Yu attempted to enter his preferred range, Zhang's superior footwork and timing prevented him from establishing his game. Perhaps the most telling thing was Yu's apparent lack of adaptation when his traditional approach wasn't working. Despite Wing Chun's reputation for adaptability, a principle emphasized by Ip Man himself, Yu seemed unable to adjust his strategy as Xiong dominated the exchanges. This raises important questions about how traditional arts are taught and whether the training methods adequately prepare practitioners for modern combat scenarios. The irony of this matchup becomes even more apparent when we consider Yu's prestigious background. As a direct descendant of the Ip Man lineage, training under the same system that produced Bruce Lee, one might have expected more adaptability. Instead, we saw Yu struggling with basic reactions to modern fighting methodology. When Xiong began using trips and takedown attempts, Yu's response showed a clear gap in his training. His attempts at traditional slap boxing and Pak Sao techniques proved ineffective. And despite Wing Chun's theoretical emphasis on standing grappling, Yu showed none of the practical application needed in a real fight. These four fights tell us something crucial about the evolution of martial arts. The success stories, like Zhou Van Duin's spectacular knockout, show that traditional principles can work in modern contexts, but only when adapted and integrated with contemporary fighting knowledge. The struggles of pure traditionalists highlight the importance of pressure testing techniques and being willing to evolve. Does this mean Wing Chun is ineffective? Not necessarily. Rather, these matches suggest that any martial art, traditional or modern, must be pressure-tested and adapted to remain relevant in actual combat situations. The most successful practitioners are those who honor their art's principles while being willing to evolve their training methods and technical applications. What do you think about these intense clashes between Wing Chun and MMA? Have these fights changed your perspective on traditional martial arts? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.